Miss me? Today's video, we're going to be having a look again at the NECA Cult Classics Hall of Fame, Series 1. This is Wes Craven's new nightmare, Freddy Krueger. Before we do anything else, let's take the tape measure to figure out how tall one Freddy Krueger would be. He's 7 inches in height. Here he is, moving him over and trying our best to get him to continue to stand. Here he is next to his original release. This is the Wes Craven's New Nightmare Freddy that we already had a look at. Again, these are very difficult figures to stand. They almost look identical to one another until you really start looking at the upgraded paint apps that they've added to the heads. In fact, actually, we'll look at those right now. Here's the difference between the two. Very crudely applied here on the original release, New Nightmare Freddy, versus the upgrade here on the Wes Craven's New Nightmare, at least the Hall of Fame version. You can see that they've gone in and added some additional black panel lining, which now has all those details really shine and really stand out by contrast to this one here. This one seems almost unfinished now when you compare it to the one now on the right. Costume-wise, they are identical to one another. There's nothing that's been changed from one Freddy to the other. Now, the trade-off, though, one could say, is use this Freddy as a permanent display fixture because it's a better-looking Freddy. Unfortunately, the trade-off, though, is the thumb blade from his new upgraded glove has broken off over the course of time, and I could either otherwise replace it, or what I might do, I might very well Frankenstein the Freddy we're looking at by taking the hand off of this one and replacing it. I think also if you look at the costumes, his sweater, that is much more cleanly applied here on the Wes Craven's, I keep saying Wes Craven's, they are both Wes Craven's, but the Hall of Fame, I should say, Freddy, has the much cleaner paint applications here on the sweater versus a very sloppy run-through on the original Freddy, which is all the more reason why I probably will do my best to kind of just take parts from this one here to give us a completed Freddy on this one, because I think this is the better looking design Freddy. Like the jacket and everything else, if you even look at the jacket, this one has almost what looks to be like glue residual or almost like a sheen that's been added to it. This one is a much cleaner presentation. Of course, you still got those lines running through it, which is disappointing, but at the very least, the jacket looks a little bit more cleanly applied than the paint that was added to this one here. But those are the differences between the two. Unfortunately, I did lose the head. I still have to go looking for it on this Freddy, but I think this is a superior head sculpt of the two. And I think, actually, now that memory serves me correctly, this is the head sculpt that I lost from this head here. You can see one is a little bit more angrier, the one's got a little bit more of a more sterner expression, let's say. That this is the head sculpt that this one also should have come with, and I just happened to lose it. So there are your differences between the two Freddys. Really won't spend a lot of time on this one because we've already had a look at it. So we'll put that one aside. We'll get Freddy to stand, which can be difficult at times. I'll talk a little bit more about that also in a second as well. Once I can get him to stand, fingers crossed, let's not have the whole entire review fall apart from there. But once we get him to stand, let's have a look at his accessories. Now, with Hall of Fame figures, we're just going to bring the camera down. With Hall of Fame figures, a lot of times what you did get is re-releases of figures, but then they added little extra bonuses to it, a little bit more worthy than of picking up these releases above and beyond the one that you may have already had in your collection. Still, that being said, there are a lot of carryovers that come with this Freddy that we've already gotten before. Case in point is the display base, which we've looked at before, which is part of Freddy's world, so to speak, and it's got all the little serpents running their way through the very crude looking stonework here of the base. Also comes with a pillar, which is no different than the one that we looked at before. In case you were also wondering, it's fine and good for me to say that, but we'll put the pillar post there. And we'll bring in the one that came with the other Freddy. You can see that they are identical to one another. You could, I really entertain the idea, I suppose, of bringing these two together, but it looks like you've just literally taken the one here and just flipped it around. But there's a couple of ways that you can display them. I suppose you could kind of have them side by side as well. It's not that they interlock, nor were they ever intended to interlock. You could sort of do that also as well. But they are identical to one another. There's really nothing different. Paint, of course, mileage may vary. Paint will change from figure to figure, so yours might be slightly darker. If we looked at like the one that we had previously looked at, it's got what looks to be a little bit more of darker brown happening underneath all of this. This one seems a little bit lighter in comparison. This one also has slightly darker flooring, but that may not specifically be for the Hall of Fame, simply just it's a figure-to-figure basis, and your figure stand might be slightly even darker than this. It might even be even lighter than this, and that will just vary from figure to figure. We'll move Freddy back into frame here. Other re-releases, or part of the re-release here, is also the script, which I so happen to have upside down. The script is pre-molded, so you can't close it. I like that they've even frayed one of the pages, so it definitely gives it a three-dimensional look. It looks like something that could, in theory, be flipped over, and simply just can't. It's been painted on the underside there with almost like a creamy beige sort of color, and you've got the white on the individual pages. They've even panel lined the notion that there are multiple pages making up the script. So all very nicely done. We got this before. Upside down. No, right side up. Here we go. We had gotten this before. We get it again. That's perfectly okay. We'll move that to the side. The other thing he comes included with is this fedora, and comparing that to the original Freddy's fedora. To the credit, actually, of the original Freddy, the first one that we looked at, that is, it is slightly darker. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because that will also vary from figure to figure. Your figure's hat, assuming, is not dropped on my floor currently, but your hat may be slightly darker, maybe slightly lighter. Again, results may vary. So I may even very well use this hat for displaying with Freddy. Softer plastic, but it's not overly soft. It's still got a good rigidness to it. And you can go ahead and take it and put it onto his head. Sits very firmly in place. Here we go. And it looks good. Like it looks genuinely good on Freddy. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you've already got this Freddy. Well, why would you want to display him yet again? Keeping in mind, of course, that the other Freddy also had the two variations of heads. The Cult Classics Hall of Fame, however, does give you an alternate head sculpt. And I was also pleased that when NECA released this guy as an Ultimate, which we will look at in probably not the next video, but who's to say, but they also gave us this head sculpt too. This is the Demon Freddy head sculpt, with the inclusion of the horns and slightly more peaked out, pointed out ears. It's also got a forked tongue. I don't know if you can see that as well, but very nicely detailed and textured all around. There's the hole underneath in which it's going to attach to Freddy's head, Freddy's neck, I should say. So we'll go ahead and we'll take Freddy's head off. It's a simple just pulling off of the peg and then just revisiting the other head sculpt. I have to admit, it's harder to get the new head on than to take the head off. The head, taking it off, is very easy, actually. But there it is with the demon head. Now, unfortunately, though, the demon head's colors will slightly vary from the neck. The neck will still be of a lighter variety. But from head on, you're not necessarily going to see it like that. So it blends well enough that it's passable. I like the nature of the very bright white eyes that they've incorporated onto Freddy here. Again, you've got slightly darker colors. Kind of saw a little bit of this style of Freddy, although a variation to this, in Freddy vs. Jason, where Freddy had emerged from the dock pier, and he had this slightly more demonic sort of head. Of course, it's not quite the same head, but It's another instance in which we've seen a demon style of Freddy. For its time in which this figure was released, I have to admit that the head sculpt here is really rather good. Mostly a darker rusted red, but there's some additional coloring in there as well, so it gives you a little extra pop, and it definitely helps to bring a lot of those details out. So if, for example, you do have both Freddys, the original release and the Cult Classics Hall of Fame, it entertains the idea of keeping, I probably would end up keeping the demon head sculpt on, and then keeping the other one. In fact, what I could even do, keeping this one with the demon head, I could then get the more cleaner looking head sculpt and swap it out for this one, and then I could have an actual, you know, the regular Freddy. Or, you know, because this is a messier looking paint, I could put the demon head onto this head, onto this shoulder, and then have this as the regular Freddy. So there's a couple of different options available there. It's just a shame, unfortunately, that through the process of having this in my collection, I did ultimately break these blades. I can only stress this as best as I can. These blades are very fragile, very brittle plastic. Don't know if you can hear that or not, but that's the sound of brittle plastic, my friends. So be mindful of that. The thumb, it was inevitable that that blade would have broken off. I'm surprised, in fact, that none of the other blades have broken off over the years of owning this. But again, just a simple swapping that out. I pull the hand out and replace it with the one that I had before. Okay, so let's look at his posability. It will be on par with the one that we've already just recently looked at, and why not keep the demon head on there? After all, it does make him unique from the other Freddy. So his head rotates all the way around, and you got the hinge happening up and down via the ball joint. I know I don't have the head on completely. Oh, yeah. Shoulders hinge outward. I believe this is during the time that NECA was using clear plastic for their pegs, so just be mindful of that you don't accidentally break the arm. That would really suck a whole lot. But the arm does rotate all the way around. I know as I said that I was jinxing myself, so I'm not going to say it ever again. Shoulders hinge outward. You've got the rotation happening in the forearm as well. You had the rotation happening in the hands. Waist swivel. Now, I had said this at the beginning. I'll talk about this a little bit later. The one foot here, unfortunately, is really loose on Freddy. This foot is not so bad. This foot being the way that it is, definitely does make things trickier for getting this figure to properly stand. He can stand, but a lot of the times it is a balancing act to get him to hopefully not topple over. Of Freddy's overall new design, I always really liked New Nightmare's design. The one thing I really wasn't crazy about was his pants. I always found his pants looked silly, especially when certain light hit it. But it was a neat looking design of having inverted colors. The more traditional red sweater now mixed out with a green sweater, now with red stripes. And I like the interior of his jacket as well. This is a nice take on Freddy. And again, with NECA double dipping this figure, so to speak, at the very least, they didn't simply just re-release the exact same figure. No. They actually gave us a new figure to some regard. Same accessories, but at the very least, an interchangeable head, which was then worthy enough to pick him up a second time around. Generally, when it came to the NECA Cult Classics Hall of Fame figures, you got pretty much the same figure as what you got before, except for a brand new head sculpt. They've done it here with the New Nightmare Freddy's, and they also did it with John Kramer from the Saw films. So it was enough that collectors would entertain the idea of picking up yet another figure. At the very least, they could swap out the heads and get a brand new look for the character. Case in point here with NECA Toys Cult Classics Hall of Fame New Nightmare Freddy, I really like the demon head, and it's different enough that I feel like I've got a unique take on Freddy to justify having him on display with the other Freddy I've already picked up. Of course, the rest of the figure's body from the neck down is same tried and true that we saw before, but I have to admit that the paint as well as the sculpt seem generally a little bit more presented here, cleanly more presented here on this figure than we looked at with the first Freddy, especially his default head. The panel lining and the paint look a lot better applied on the Hall of Fame version of Freddy than it did on its original release. which would again entertain the idea for at least myself of keeping Demon Head Freddy's on this figure and using the better sculpted head of the defaulted head that came with this figure and put that on the other Freddy's body. Then at the very least, I've got a better, superior head sculpt on that Freddy, and I can keep the demon head on this one. If you guys are looking to pick this one up for yourself, it's unfortunately a case that the figure is no longer available from NECA. A lot of the Hall of Fame figures, as well as the cult classics as a whole, have become considerably more expensive on the market. Even Nightmare Freddy here, New Nightmare Freddy, despite for the fact that he's already gotten an ultimate release in recent years, it still is unfortunate that if you want to pick up the older figure, he is still expensive to find him in aftermarket. I don't know if I would say it's still worth picking this guy up for simply the fact that the Ultimate figure has already given a release. But if we have a look at that figure, which we will in a future video, I'll do some comparisons between the two. There's still love, I think, can be made for these older cult classics if you're willing to spend the money on them, and that's unfortunately the case. Today, though, we were revisiting the NECA Toys Cult Classics Hall of Fame Series 1. This was Wes Craven's New Nightmare Freddy with the included Demon Head Freddy. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Many more videos will be coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.